Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 3:15. We are about to commence our study session. Today is Thursday, October 10th. Can we please have roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Harnick,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Nestandi,
Here.
Councilmember Truby,
Here.
Mayor Quintanilla.
Present.
All councils present.
The topic for today's study session is study session discussion on a draft ordinance amending the Palm Desert Municipal Code to prohibit the possession of firearms at City Hall. Who will be bringing forward the presentation?
Honorable Mayor and City Council, the matter before you stems from the development of a policy addressing threats of violence directed towards council members and candidates. During this process, staff identified a gap in state law. While the California Penal Code prohibits firearms in government buildings, it does not extend the prohibition to individuals carrying concealed weapons with a permit. At the September 12th study session meeting, staff received feedback to explore whether an ordinance prohibiting concealed weapons at City Hall is legally viable. Upon research, staff found that the city of Sunnyvale had enacted a similar ordinance, and legal counsel has determined that such an ordinance could also be implemented in Palm Desert. The ordinance aims to close the gap by prohibiting the possession of firearms at Palm Desert City Hall, including those carried by concealed weapon permit holders. However, it should be considered that the ordinance itself may provide a false sense of security, as someone intending to commit a crime may not be deterred by the potential of an infraction. Additionally, without further security measures, such as screening or metal detection, this ordinance may have limited effectiveness in preventing firearms from being brought into City Hall. And the city attorney and I are available for any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Please.
Thanks, Anthony. On page 5 of the material, it's about halfway through that paragraph. And when it comes to restrictions on carrying firearms in public, the Supreme Court has recognized that states may restrict the carrying of firearms in, quote, sensitive places. So that addresses what states can do. Does it address what cities can do? I mean, that's a nice quote to pull, you know, giving latitude to states, I guess, but I just wonder if cities are allowed to. Page 5. Oh, sorry, last paragraph. Yep. So I don't know if, you know, we'd be kind of overstepping our jurisdiction by doing anything related to the Second Amendment.
And I would like to add, the Supreme Court ruled in July of 2022 in favor of the Second Amendment and the right to carry beyond just your home. So they heard a case again. I don't know if Isra, if you've seen that case from July of 2022.
Sure. So I'll weigh in a little bit here. In terms of the Supreme Court weighing in, they are headed in a direction of really scrutinizing whether a certain gun regulation is the sort that would have been regulated, you know, is the regulation that's proposed is of the sort that was enacted around the time of the Second Amendment. So whatever the regulation is viewed with that lens. Cities and states have traditionally had restrictions, such as when you enter the courthouse or you come into a city hall building. Those types of regulations are still blessed by the United States Supreme Court. It's not just that you're, you know, out of your home or in your home. It's specifically what is the regulation targeting? And then the question becomes, is that type of regulation the kind that was traditional back when the Second Amendment was adopted? So still court buildings and a city, you know, a city hall build, like a civic center building, those are still within the traditional sort of regulations that had occurred and have occurred over the years. And so that's the limited type of regulation that we're looking at today, and which we think is still viable under the current analysis, whether it's a state or a city.
Any other thoughts? Please.
Also in the ordinance, or I'm sorry, yeah, in the ordinance, this would be the second paragraph that begins with whereas. You guys, I guess staff cited 3 incidents where shootings occurred at City Hall, Inland Regional Center, and the third one. And I just wonder if any of those 3 acts of violence were committed by CCW holders.
Very unlikely, and no. At the Riverside shootings, they were not concealed weapon permit holders.
So, and I'm just going to offer an opinion here. In my way of thinking, CCW holders, I don't think historically I don't think statistically have ever committed any crimes here in Riverside County, at least from my discussions with Sheriff's Department. In my opinion, if we pass this ordinance, it would have a negative or deleterious effect on law-abiding citizens because they were the only ones who would honor this rule. You're effectively disarming people who have gotten CCWs. CCWs are not acquired in order for people to commit offensive acts. They're typically acquired for people who want to have a form of self-defense. And I believe that if we were to pass this ordinance, it would actually tip the scales in favor of people who would want to commit violent crimes. So that's my opinion. And I think it would have the absolute opposite effect of what it's intended for.
And I would echo what Councilmember Truby just said. And actually, when we look around us, we're still doing the remodeling project. In part, it was based upon to make our city hall more safe. And we've spent several thousand to make it more safe. And as we just heard from staff, it's a false sense of security on top of what Councilmember Truby just said, because we don't have metal detectors and other means to make us safe. All we're doing is, I believe, penalizing law-abiding citizens and the Second Amendment right.
Councilmember Kelly, yes.
I have two questions. What is the policy at the county office building? Do we know that in regard to concealed weapon permits?
No, there was no research done on what the county office building does.
I feel that's important to know.
You know, if I can add to that, whatever it is, when I go to the county building, you go through metal detectors.
I understand that. So I would, before we really debate this, I would want to know what our county's policy is that's meaningful to me. And because the sheriff's office is responsible for maintaining security at these meetings, have we asked for an opinion from the sheriff's office?
No, Madam City Clerk. I'm sorry, no.
I'd be interested to learn the answers on both of those fronts.
Any other thoughts or questions? My question, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm simply going to state that I agree with Councilmember Kelly.
My question would be in regards to, right now, portions of Senate Bill 2, which does address the CCW components, has been challenged specifically to define the portion of what are sensitive places. And I'm wondering if, once that is decided by the state of California, would that then allow us or require us to revise our position or our ordinance based upon that decision? I don't know if it's in one of the circuit courts. I don't think it's gone all the way up to the state Supreme Court, but I would ask the question to council.
Certainly. So the matter's been litigated in federal courts, and the a Ninth Circuit panel of 3 judges put out an opinion a few weeks ago, I think about 3 weeks ago, and this was at the preliminary injunction stage, so it's sort of an early time for the Ninth Circuit to weigh in. But what they signaled was that they were looking at each specific gun regulation in SB 2 under that rubric that the Supreme Court set forward, which is, is this a traditional area for Second Amendment regulation? And so what they signaled there was that SB 2 contained some locations that they felt was constitutionally impermissible and some that they did feel that were permissible, one of which was a city government building. So that's that same kind of conversation about courthouses or city hall buildings. That's a traditional area under, that the Ninth Circuit has signaled that it's willing to to uphold. So that's where that litigation is right now. It also has, locations that were, that prohibited gun carry under SB2 that it's signaling that it's going to strike down. So it's sort of a mixed bag in terms of what's able to be regulated and what's not. What seems clear is that a city hall building would be permissible to regulate.
Permissible to regulate in the sense that they could come and say, no, we are revoking your permission to allow CCW if that's the ordinance. So
Correct.
at this point, the state clarification. So looking at the judge's deliberations regarding the state law would then apply to how we would need to uphold or revise our ordinance.
Right. Well, since the purpose of the study session is a very limited view at potentially regulating just the city hall campus, if this goes on to the United States Supreme Court and holds, there would be no change. There would be no further revision to an ordinance that prohibits carrying in city hall. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And here's my thoughts on it. We're not going to put in metal detectors. I don't think. Are we going to put them in at every door? I think we're going way over the top for an incident that occurred that could have been avoided also. I don't think we should be reactive. We have sheriffs here that are here protecting us. I think to start, every time you make a rule, then there's 3 more rules that have to be attached to that. I think this is something we put aside. If we see the Ninth Circuit comes down with something, the Supreme Court comes down with something, we'll pay attention. At this point, I think we're fine. And for us to go further and start making rules that we really can't enforce, it's just not a good look.
I would support that sentiment. So I can count that there's at least 3 of us that perhaps are ready to put this aside.
Any additional thoughts, Councilmember Kelly?
I would still, I'm not saying you have to bring it back as an agenda item. I would like to learn the answer to the 2 questions I posed. I want to be as supportive as possible of the sheriff's deputies who are charged with protecting us. I try to be careful about how I conduct myself to support them. So I would like to know what the sheriff's office feels is the best approach.
I support that. I absolutely think that we need to take into consideration the men and women that will be guarding those doors, that are responsible, that we have placed in that place of security. So I absolutely think that we need to get their input, and it would not be a bad idea also to see what the county's policies are. Of course, ultimately, we will look at how the 5 of us were to vote, but it helps to have the best amount of information possible to make the wisest decisions. Are there any additional questions or comments? Thank you. I do have one public comment from Mr. Brad Anderson.
Hello, Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Ransom Mirage, but I wanted to come and speak on this, and thank you for allowing this to take place.
Can we have the timer, please? 1 moment. Thank you.
Thank you again. I'm in extremely strong opposition to any type of city governance over any constitutional rights that we have as Americans, and this is one of them. And this is a targeted event at a certain population. Well, this is my opinion, and I think you had consensus on this board not to bring this forward any farther than it already has. And if you do, I would highly recommend that you seek other legal counsel that can maybe input. Of course, nothing against that legal counsel, but I think more eyes on this and different set of values might be necessary to look at exactly what you're trying to do with this. And this might be a feel-good all type ordinance, but it's definitely I want to say non-American or un-American. So I would, like I said, strongly oppose this. And hopefully I never hear from it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. By any chance, do we have any online comments? Okay, thank you so very much. It is 3:30. Should we just go on ahead and start our following meeting at this moment?
And Madam Mayor, I'll just note that there is no public comment for closed session.
I just had my agenda here.
Oh, good. I'm going to get one. Thank you. That's my favorite.